Have you ever wondered why some men in their 40s, 50s, 60s keep attracting women who are so much younger than them without even trying, while other men the same age, with the same money, sometimes even better looking, just can't seem to pull it off? I'm about to tell you something most men your age will never admit out loud. It's not about age, it's not about money, and it's definitely not about looks. Stay with me until the end, because point number 7 on this list is the exact thing that separates a man who is desired from a man who is only tolerated. And I promise you, when we get there, you're going to understand something about yourself that maybe nobody has ever told you. I need to confess something before I start. I've watched brilliant, successful, generous men feel completely invisible. I've seen men who had so much to offer questioning their own worth, just because a mirror or a number on a birth certificate got inside their head. And I've also seen the opposite. I've watched 60-year-old men walk into a room and shift the entire energy without raising their voice, without forcing anything at all. The difference between those two kinds of men isn't luck. It's a set of behaviors. And I'm going to break every single one down for you right now, one by one. Before I go on, I want you to answer something just for yourself. You don't even need to say it out loud. Just feel the answer. Do you feel more like the first man I described, or the second one? Hold on to that answer, because by the end of this video, it's going to make a lot more sense. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever felt overlooked next to younger men, if you've ever quietly asked yourself, do I still have something to offer? Drop a comment below with the word present. Just that. Present. I want to know how many men watching this video are carrying that same doubt right now, because you are not alone in this, and I'm about to show you exactly where to start changing it. The first behavior is this. This kind of man doesn't chase, he attracts. Let me ask you something direct. No sugarcoating. Have you ever gotten so anxious waiting for her reply that you sent a second message before she even answered the first one? If you felt a little knot in your stomach reading that, pay close attention to what I'm about to say. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life, because it's more subtle than people think. Picture this. She takes 3 hours to text back. 3 hours that feel like 3 days. And the insecure man sits there checking his phone, refreshing to see if she's read it, coming up with 1,000 excuses for why she hasn't answered yet, and eventually sends another message, something like, "Hey, everything okay? You kind of disappeared," or that classic line, "Sorry to bother you again." And without even realizing it, that communicates one single thing, that he doesn't have a life of his own happening while he waits. Now picture the other man. He sends the message, puts the phone down, goes to the gym, handles something at work, calls a friend, actually lives his day. When she replies 3 hours later, he responds calmly. No guilt trip, no drama. This man isn't faking disinterest. He genuinely has other things going on in his life, and that, without him ever having to say a single word about it, communicates more security than any clever line ever could. I've watched this destroy connections before they even had a chance to start. That constant availability, that constant need to explain every silence. And I've seen the opposite too, men who simply live their lives, and because they truly live, they become impossible to ignore. Here's another version of the same trap. A man matches with someone, they have a great first date, and then he texts her every single day, multiple times a day, sharing every little detail of his life before she's even asked for it. It feels romantic to him. To her, it can feel like pressure, like there's no room left for her to miss him, to wonder about him, to lean in on her own. Contrast that with a man who dates her, enjoys the time, and still keeps his Tuesday night dinner with his old college friends, still shows up to his own commitments. That space isn't coldness, it's oxygen. And oxygen is what keeps attraction alive. Hold on to this first point, because it's going to connect with something I'll reveal later, something that completely changes the way you understand attraction. The second behavior is having your own opinions and never apologizing for them. Do you agree with everything she says just to avoid a fight? That's not kindness. That's the exact opposite of attraction. Let me give you a very concrete example. She says, "I think we should go to that Thai place I love." And the man who's terrified of any friction automatically responds, "Sure, whatever you want, You pick. It sounds polite, sounds flexible, but repeated week after week, it gets tiring because there's no opinion in there at all, no preference, just an echo of whatever she said. Now think about the man who responds. I'd actually love that seafood place we went to last month, but if you're really craving Thai tonight, I'm happy to go. He listened. He considered it. And he still showed he has his own taste, his own preference, and genuine flexibility, not automatic surrender. Here's another example that plays out constantly. They're talking politics, or a movie they just watched, or even something as small as whether pineapple belongs on pizza, and instead of forming his own view, he watches her face for cues and adjusts his answer to match whatever she seems to want to hear. Women pick up on that pattern faster than men realize, and it reads as a lack of a core, a man without a center of gravity. I've heard the same complaint from younger women over and over. Almost word for word, they say men their own age agree with everything, flip their opinions in seconds, are afraid to disagree even about which movie to watch. And when those same women meet an older man who has his own stance, who can disagree respectfully, who doesn't shapeshift just to be liked, it makes a massive impact. Because it's rare, and rare is what attracts. Now let me ask you something harder, and I want you to be honest, just with yourself. In your last few relationships or conversations, how many times did you hide what you actually thought just to keep the peace? Hold that number in your head, because it matters more than you think. The third behavior is knowing how to truly listen. When's the last time you listened to a woman speak without already building your response in your head while her mouth was still moving? I'll admit it. I've done this to people I love, and when I realized it, it stung. Let me show you what this looks like in an actual conversation. She's telling you about a hard day at work, about a coworker who said something that hurt her. The man who doesn't know how to listen interrupts halfway through, something like, "Oh, that's nothing. You should hear what happened to me today," and hijacks the whole conversation back to himself. Or worse, he jumps straight into fix-it mode. You should just confront her, or you should look for another job, without even asking if she wants advice or just wants to be heard. Now picture the man who actually listens. He lets her finish, asks a question that proves he was genuinely paying attention, something like, "How did it feel when she said that in front of everyone?" And only then, if it makes sense, offers his perspective, and even then asks first, "Do you want my honest take on this? Or did you just need to get it off your chest?" That's real listening. That's presence. And presence is the strongest aphrodisiac that exists, stronger than any car, any watch, any set of muscles. There's a smaller version of this too, the kind that shows up in tiny moments. She mentions offhand 3 weeks ago that she's been wanting to try a specific little bakery downtown. The man who was actually listening remembers, and one random Saturday says, "Hey, I was thinking we could check out that bakery you mentioned." That single detail, remembered without being asked to remember it, lands harder than any grand gesture ever could. Let me ask you again, in a different way this time. When someone is talking to you, are you actually there, or is your body in the room while your mind already left? If you're enjoying this video so far, if any of these points have already hit something inside you, go ahead and hit like right now. It helps this content reach other men who need to hear it far more than you'd expect. The fourth behavior is not being afraid to be exactly who you are. Have you ever tried to look younger than you actually are? The clothes, the slang, just to try to get closer to her? That, my friend, is the single biggest mistake on this entire list. Let me tell you about a scene I've actually watched play out. A man in his early 50s, in a conversation with a woman in her late 20s, started throwing out slang that clearly wasn't natural for him. Tried talking about music he obviously didn't really know just to seem current, and the result was the exact opposite of what he wanted. It came off forced, it came off strange, and she felt it instantly, even without saying a word. Now compare that with another man, also in his 50s, who in a similar moment simply said, "Look, I don't know that band you're talking about, but back in my day we listened to this," and played her something that genuinely shaped his youth, with pride, no apology for being from a different generation. That second man, without trying anything at all, generated far more curiosity and far more charm than the first one ever could. Here's another version of this. A man at a dinner starts explaining a reference from the 80s and catches himself saying, "You probably don't even know this movie," in an almost apologetic tone. The confident version of that same man says the reference proudly, laughs, and adds, "You're missing out. This one's a classic. Go watch it tonight." No shrinking, no apology, just an invitation into his world. Younger women aren't out here looking for a boy. They already have plenty of boys available. What they're looking for, even if they can't quite name it, is a man who's comfortable in his own skin, who owns his own story, his own age, his own scars. Authenticity is exactly what separates charming from cringeworthy. And here I need to confess something else. I have personally felt drawn, and I'll say this openly, to older men who never once tried to look younger than they were. Men who talked about their age with pride, not shame. That changes everything. It completely shifts the energy in the room. The fifth behavior is having purpose, not just status. Do you live for something, or do you just survive paying the bills? That question sounds simple, but it carries a lot of weight. Let me give you two very different examples so you can really feel the contrast. There's the man who, when asked what he does, only mentions his title, "I'm the director of this or that at this company," and stops right there, and the conversation dies on the spot. And there's the man who says, "I work in that field, but on weekends I've been building a project I always wanted to do," or "I recently discovered I love mentoring young people in my industry," and his eyes actually light up when he talks about it. That second man, even earning less than the first, is infinitely more magnetic because he has a life with direction, with meaning, with something that pulses underneath the routine. It's not the car he drives, it's not the title on his business card. It's the energy of a man who knows exactly where he's headed in life, who has a reason to get up in the morning beyond work and waiting for the weekend. Purpose is magnetic because it signals emotional stability, and emotional stability is the most desired, most rare thing on the entire market, far rarer than money. Think about the difference between a man who says "my job is fine, I guess," and a man who says "I've been teaching myself to restore old motorcycles on the side. Come by the garage sometime, I'll show you." One of those men has a world you can step into. The other one has a paycheck. Hold that thought, because I'm coming back to it at the very end, in a way I think is going to surprise you. The sixth behavior is knowing how to make someone laugh without trying too hard. Forced humor pushes people away. Natural humor pulls people in. Do you know how to tell the difference in your own way of being? Let me paint you a simple picture. There's the man who memorizes jokes, watches a comedian set, and tries to repeat the punchline word for word in conversation. And it usually lands flat, falls into that awkward silence afterward. And there's the man who, in the middle of some small, clumsy moment, like dropping his fork at dinner, simply says with total ease, "Well, there goes my attempt to impress you today," and laughs at himself without any drama. That kind of humor, light, spontaneous, born from the actual moment instead of a rehearsed script, creates instant connection. Mature men who carry lightness, who can laugh at themselves, who don't take everything so seriously all the time, build closeness that no scripted joke ever could. Laughing together is a form of intimacy that happens before any touch, before any kiss even happens. And if you don't yet know how to laugh at yourself, that's an exercise I'd recommend starting today, because it completely changes how people feel around you. Now, we've arrived at the point I promised you at the very beginning of this video, point number 7, the one that separates desired from tolerated. Pay very close attention right now, because this might be the most important sentence you hear all month. A man who needs her validation to feel good about himself is suffocating, even if he's kind, even if he's attractive, even if he has everything going for him. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Picture a man who texts asking, "Are we okay? Are we good?" multiple times a week, who needs to hear "I love you" every single day just to feel secure, who has a bad day entirely because she took too long to reply to a good morning text. Each one of those things, on its own, seems small, but together they communicate one thing only, that this man depends entirely on her to feel okay about himself, and that exhausts anyone, in any relationship. Now picture the opposite. A man who clearly loves, who clearly cares, but who keeps being fully himself regardless of her response, who still has his own projects, his own friends, his own joy, even while being deeply connected to her. Needing too much pushes people away, but a whole, complete man who wants her but doesn't need her to breathe is irresistible. The difference between these two men isn't about looks, it isn't about age. It lives entirely on the inside, in how he sees his own worth when he's alone, when nobody's watching. I'm going to confess something personal here. I once loved someone who needed me so much it smothered everything. And I've also known someone who genuinely wanted me but never once needed me to feel complete. And the difference between those two experiences was like comparing night and day. One drained me completely. The other one kept pulling me in, more and more. If point number 7 just hit something in you, comment the word whole down below. I want to know how many men felt this one in their gut. The 8th behavior is taking care of your body, not to impress, but because you respect yourself. Do you take care of yourself out of vanity or out of self-respect? There's a massive difference between those two things, and women feel that difference with almost unsettling precision. Picture the man who works out purely thinking about how the photo's going to look, who takes a mirror selfie at the gym every week just to post it, who talks about his workouts constantly like they're a trophy to show off. And picture the other man who walks early in the morning because he genuinely enjoys starting his day that way, who cooks real food for himself because he cares about his own body, who lets his hair go gray and doesn't try to hide it because he's caring for his health, not managing an image. The second man radiates genuine discipline, the kind that doesn't need an audience to exist, and discipline is attractive at any age, in any decade of life. Here's one more small but telling example. The man who orders a salad in front of her because he thinks it looks impressive, versus the man who genuinely orders what he wants and simply says, I try to eat well most days so I can enjoy the days I don't. No performance, just a real relationship with his own body. The 9th behavior is knowing how to talk about anything. Can you hold an interesting conversation for 40 minutes without talking about work and without complaining about life? Really think about that before you answer. Picture 2 very different conversations. In the first, the man only talks about today's traffic, about how difficult his boss is, about everything wrong with the world right now, and the conversation slowly dies because there's no life in it at all. In the second, the man starts telling a story about a trip he once took alone, mentions a mistake he made in his 20s and what he learned from it, asks her what she dreamed of being as a kid and actually seems interested in the answer, brings up a book, an old film, a song that marked a certain chapter of his life. A rich range of life experience, real stories lived on his own skin. That's something only time can build, and no social media filter can fake that. That range is exactly what makes a younger woman feel like she's being pulled into a whole world she hasn't explored yet. And that's a form of seduction most men completely overlook. The 10th behavior is treating her as an equal, not as a trophy. Have you ever treated a younger woman like she's less capable simply because she's younger than you? This might be the biggest mistake on the entire list, and I need to be direct here because it truly matters. Let me give you a very clear example. There's the man who, when she shares an opinion on something he considers complex, responds with that tone, "Ah, that's cute that you think that," or simply ignores what she said and keeps talking like she said nothing at all. And there's the man who listens to her opinion, even when he disagrees, and responds, "That's interesting. I never thought about it that way. Tell me more." Younger women sense, almost instinctively, when they're only being seen as an older man's ego validation, when they're being treated like a pretty accessory instead of a person with her own mind. Genuine respect, treating her ideas as valid, giving her opinion the same weight as your own. That's what builds real connection, not just a passing attraction that evaporates in a couple of weeks. And now we've reached the 11th and final behavior, which to me is the most powerful one of all, knowing when to walk away. Do you know when it's time to leave a conversation, a situation, a relationship that no longer serves you? Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Picture a situation where she cancels plans for the 3rd time in a row with no real explanation. The man who doesn't know how to walk away keeps pushing, tries to reschedule again, accepts whatever excuse comes his way, and without realizing it, quietly teaches her that she can treat him this way with zero consequences. And there's the man who, in that exact same situation, responds calmly, "That's okay, I understand. But maybe we should talk about whether this is actually working for both of us," and is genuinely willing to walk away if he has to. No drama, no guilt trip, just clarity. This, more than anything else on this entire list, communicates self-worth in a way no words ever could. A man who knows when to step back is never seen as desperate, and it's exactly that quality, that ability to walk away with his head held high, that makes a woman want to stay. Now I need to ask you again, remember that question from the very beginning. Did you feel more like the insecure man or the magnetic one? I want you to answer it again, now that you've heard all 11 points, all the examples, all the detail I've laid out for you. And I want you to be completely honest, because honesty with yourself is the first step of any real change. I need to confess one last thing before we wrap up this video. No man is born knowing how to do these 11 things. Not one. Every man you've ever admired, every man who seemed to carry that natural magnetism, at some point also doubted himself, also felt invisible, also compared himself to younger men, and felt that same tightness in his chest. The difference between him and the man who's still stuck is that he decided, at some specific moment in his life, to stop shrinking and start taking up space with truth. And that decision is available to you right now, this exact second, while you're watching this video. You don't need to be younger. You don't need more money. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop apologizing for who you are and start fully inhabiting your own life, your own age, your own story. That, and only that, is what truly attracts. Now tell me something. Out of these 11, how many do you already do naturally today? Comment that number below. I want to read every single reply. And if this video hit home for you in any way, hit like, share it with a friend who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel, because next week I'm going to show you mistake number 1, the one that makes even the most interesting man lose a woman's interest in less than 5 minutes, and I promise you that next video is going to sting a little, but it'll be worth every second. You already have everything you need to be that man. You just need to stop waiting for permission to become him. I'll see you in the next video.